Welcome to our scary channel. Get ready for an unforgettable experience with an exciting horror journey that will take you to scary worlds and unparalleled adventures. Follow us if you dare.
The car stopped in the middle of the deserted desert road, with bodies scattered among the dry grass. An eerie silence hung over the place, and the sky was filled with gray clouds that had not released any rain for many years. The passengers, 4 young friends, stared in shock and horror at the gruesome scene before them. John, the young man who was driving the car, was desperately trying to restart it. It won't work. There's nothing. Can you see this? John shouted loudly, while the others tried to think of their remaining options. This is unbelievable, said David, his friend who was sitting in the front seat. We're trapped here, in the middle of the desert with no shelter, and night will be coming soon. Lisa, the quiet young girl, was trying to use her mobile phone, but to no avail. There's no signal here, I can't reach anyone, she exclaimed. Meanwhile, Tom, the 4th young man, was intently looking at the bodies scattered among the grass. What is this? Who are they? He asked with a trembling voice, pointing to the bodies that were oddly strewn along the road. Maybe they were travelers like us, but what happened to them? Lisa wondered in a trembling voice. In a moment of silence, the bodies began to rise one by one, slowly making their way toward the young friends. As the bodies began to rise and move, the friends wondered if they were witnessing a bad dream or trapped in a horrifying nightmare. The atmosphere was thick with terror and astonishment as the bodies slowly spread among the dry grass, moving toward them as if searching for a right to life. What is this? What's happening? John shouted, trying to understand the truth but too stunned to comprehend the tragedy unfolding before his eyes. We can't stay here. We have to go. David shouted as John tried once again to start the car, but to no avail. Tom felt terror and panic as he groped around, searching for anything that could explain this horrifying nightmare. They're dead, but they're moving, Tom whispered, unable to believe what he was seeing and unable to comprehend how the deceased could move in such a manner. Surrounded by pale, moving bodies, Lisa, who had been desperately trying to contact the outside world, whispered, "Where is help?" Her voice quivered as their screams grew louder, and terror escalated. Suddenly, the bodies started moving towards them with strange, steady steps, causing complete panic among the friends. They began to run frantically, abandoning the stalled car, searching for refuge in this cursed place. However, the bodies pursued them relentlessly, as if seeking revenge or wanting to transition to the afterlife alongside them. Amidst the terror and panic, the friends tried to flee from the slowly approaching, moving bodies. The dry grass beneath their feet trembled with each step they took, and the decayed bodies moved as if following mysterious commands beyond human comprehension. John screamed, "This can't be real. We need to find shelter, or anywhere we can hide." David shouted, running frantically behind Lisa and Tom, who were desperately searching for a safe haven. The moving bodies not only continued to approach slowly but started accelerating terrifyingly towards the friends. The frightening sounds grew louder, amplifying the terror and hastening their escape. The friends ran frantically, leaving the relentless bodies behind as they relentlessly attempted to reach them. Suddenly, Tom became separated from the rest of the friends as his foot slipped on the scattered grass. Stumbling, he desperately tried to regain his balance, but the nearby bodies were rapidly approaching. As Tom struggled to stand up, a pale hand emerged from the grass, gripping his ankle tightly. He screamed in terror, futilely attempting to free himself from its deathly grasp. At the same time, Lisa, David, and John were running relentlessly, searching for any way out of this gruesome nightmare. However, the bodies were mercilessly following them, closing in with each step they took. As the bodies closed in on Tom, his screams echoed through the silent space, intensifying the terror of the other friends who were running tirelessly to escape. "We have to go back and help him," John shouted, looking back, but David and Lisa grabbed him by the arms. "We can't go back. There are too many of them," Lisa screamed, tears streaming down her face, her eyes filled with fear and despair. At that moment, they heard Tom's final scream turn into a chilling moan before the sound completely faded away. They realized Tom had fallen into the grip of the bodies, and they didn't have time to mourn him. They knew that if they stopped, their fate would likely be the same as his. They continued running, the rugged rocky terrain making their escape increasingly difficult. They started feeling exhausted and weary, but they knew stopping was not an option. Suddenly, David noticed something strange on the horizon. "Look! There's a building over there," he shouted, pointing with his finger. There was an old, abandoned building, appearing as a final refuge amidst this desert hell. They headed towards it with all their remaining strength, sweat pouring down their foreheads and fear filling their hearts. As they reached the entrance, they were bruised and scratched from the thorns and rocks, but hope for survival gave them one last push. John pushed the rusty door with force, and they collapsed inside the building, which was ominously dark. They quickly closed the door behind them and leaned against it to catch their breaths. Inside, a foul smell permeated the air, and the walls were cracked and covered in mold. "Are we safe here?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling, as she stared into the darkness surrounding them. "I don't know, but we need to try to find a place to hide," David said, searching in the darkness for anything that could be used as an additional barrier for the door. Meanwhile, John was trying to use his mobile phone to illuminate the area, but the battery was almost drained. At that moment, they heard strange sounds coming from the dark hallways of the building. The sounds resembled whispers and muffled screams, intensifying their fear. "We need to find a room and secure it tightly," John said, taking Lisa's hand and leading her through the dark hallway. David followed behind them as they searched for a safe refuge in this abandoned place. As they wandered through the building, they stumbled upon a small room with an old wooden door. They quickly entered and closed the door behind them, using scattered furniture to barricade it. They all sat on the floor, trying to control their fear and contemplate their next steps. We can't stay here forever. We need to find a way out of this place, David said in a low voice, as if trying to reassure himself as much as the others. But how? The bodies are filling the place outside, and darkness surrounds us here, Lisa said, trying to hold back her tears. At that moment, they heard heavy footsteps approaching the door. They froze in place, staring at the door with fear. Then, very slowly, the door began to shake as if something was trying to open it from the outside. Their breath caught in their chests, and they realized they were trapped between the bodies outside and the horror lurking in the darkness inside the building. We have to fight back. We can't give up now, John said, gripping a piece of wood that was on the floor, ready to defend himself and his friends. Their eyes were wide with fear, but they knew they had to fight for survival in this seemingly unending nightmare. They sat in the darkness, frozen in place, while the door shook violently. The sounds from outside grew louder, accompanied by murmurs and inhuman wheezing. The friends realized that the moment of confrontation was approaching. John, what are we going to do? Lisa asked, desperate, tears filling her eyes. We have to fight. We have no other choice, John replied hoarsely, trying to sound brave despite the fear gripping his heart. In a single moment, the door shattered, and the corpses stormed into the room. Their faces were disfigured, their bodies decayed, and their empty eyes gleamed eerily in the darkness. Screams erupted from the friends as they tried to fend off the corpses with all their might. John started swinging a piece of wood, trying to fend off the corpses, but their numbers were overwhelming. One of the corpses grabbed him by the neck and threw him to the ground. David tried to help him, but the corpses had surrounded him as well, and they began to strike him violently. Lisa screamed as she tried to escape, but the corpses were faster. They grabbed her and dragged her to the corner, where her screams were deafening. The room was filled with terror as the corpses continued their merciless attack. Amid the chaos, John saw something shiny on the floor. It was a sharp blade, possibly a fragment of a broken mirror. He grabbed it with his trembling hand, trying to make one last effort to fight back. But he couldn't move. The corpses were holding him down tightly. In the end, the blade slipped from his hand, and his eyes dimmed as the corpses tore into him savagely. The sound vanished, replaced by eerie whispers and sinister murmurs. The corpses stopped moving, as if their task was complete. With the last scream fading into the air, the desert returned to its deadly silence, and the sky, heavy with gray clouds, stood witness to the tragedy that had befallen the friends. Hours later, the place grew calm, as if nothing had happened. Only the remnants of the corpses and traces of blood remained. But in the heart of the abandoned building, the lost souls still whispered of revenge, waiting for the next victims to fall into this horrific trap.